So Ted from Nerd Immersion came out with this great video a couple weeks ago going over his table's house rules, and it inspired me to make my own video going over the house rules that my table uses. And if you stick around, you might find out some interesting house rules that you might want to pick up at your table. If you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Warners. I make content here on YouTube, but every month on my Patreon, I come out with 2024 rules compatible subclass PDFs, and for $3 a month, you get access to all of them if you sign up for my Vanguard tier. For Valentine's Day, I came out with the Passion Domain Cleric, and coming in March, I'm coming out with the Warrior of the Shield monk. So if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and check the link down in my description, and let's go ahead and get on with the video. All right, so for my first house rule, I'm gonna go over how we do critical hits. So a lot of you guys probably have heard of the Perkins crit. We do a variation of the Perkins crit that I like to call the Super Perkins crit, and it makes critical hits a lot more powerful than they already are. But with the recent 2024 rules adjustments to burst damage, I feel like it's fairly balanced with the 2024 rules, and it's very fun. It also works on monsters or players, so it's fun for the DMs as well. First, I'll go over the Perkins crit just so you guys kind of know what I'm talking about. So when you roll a critical hit with a Perkins crit, let's say you roll a D8 and you crit. So normally in D&D rules, you roll 2 D8, add them together, add your modifier, and then that's the damage. Perkins crit, you actually just roll once, and then you add the maximum possible damage for the dice you rolled. So if you rolled a D8, you would then add +8 to the damage. How the Super Perkins crit works is you roll both of the D8s. You find the dice that rolled the lowest. So let's say you rolled 2 D8s, one roll was a 2 and the other roll was a 5. Then you make the damage for the dice that rolled the lowest, so the 2, and you make it the maximum possible damage. And so you make it an 8. And it's pretty simple when you have just one dice you're rolling. But when you're like a rogue and you're using the Super Perkins crit rule with sneak attack, you gotta make sure you remember how many d6s you were supposed to roll, and so you can find the lowest of all the d6s and make them all the max damage. It's very fun, and we did a full 5-year campaign with these rules, and we had a blast with them. So yeah, I recommend them, but it might not be for everyone. House rule number 2 is we have a table that we roll on when we roll a nat 20 for initiative. Because right now in the game, when you roll a nat 20 for initiative, you do get to typically go first in initiative, but there isn't any extra thing you get, and that feels kind of bad. So I've been using this table for quite some time. If I were to try to homebrew the table and make it a bit better, I might do that some other time. Let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations. But this is the table that my group has been using for years, so let me know what you think about these options. So basically, after you roll your nat 20 on initiative, you then roll a d6 and you get one of these benefits for the duration of the combat. You roll a 1, you can hold your entire action for the first round of combat, and it doesn't consume a reaction. So for example, let's say you're like a cleric or something, you can use your bonus action and movement on your turn. If you want to hold your full action to do something else in the initiative order, you can totally do that. So like, let's say you're waiting for someone to take damage and then you can heal. That's a way like a cleric can benefit from this. But this one is definitely hit or miss. You'll notice that a lot on this table. It's kind of meant to be that way. It's not going to happen super often. So it might be really great for you. It might be just okay for you. It's kind of fun that it's kind of random like that. Number 2 though is you don't provoke opportunity attacks. This is a pretty universally beneficial ability. You roll 3, it's +10 to your movement speed. This is also a pretty universally beneficial one. Number 4 is you gain an extra unarmed strike per turn. This one in 2014 rules was very hit or miss because not a lot of classes actually have very strong unarmed strikes unless you're like a monk, for example. But now with the 2024 rules, unarmed strikes allow you to push, they allow you to grapple. So yeah, this has become more useful for more characters in the 2024 rules, and so I find that pretty decent, at least if you're a melee character. Number 5, super easy. You just gain the uncanny dodge ability. If you're a rogue or a monk and you already have it, those kind of feel bad, but if you're neither of those, then boom, now you have uncanny dodge. And then this one's pretty simple. When it was the 2014 rules, we just said you get a surprise round, but because surprise is different, in 2024 rules, you get an extra turn at the top of initiative order. That one's pretty nice. So yeah, that's the table. It comes up probably every other session for my table, but that's also because we don't do a ton of combats every session. And then number 3 is fast crafting. So I have a whole video going over this, which I'll link in the cards. But basically, I make it so that crafting times are based on the pace of the campaign. So for example, if I'm playing in a campaign or DMing for a campaign that I'm going to allow the players to have a lot of downtime, then I just use the standard crafting times. But if I'm DMing for a campaign where it's going to be a bit more fast paced, like maybe between adventures, they have like a week of downtime or like a couple weeks of downtime, and they only happen every so often, then all crafting times are halved. And then if I'm doing a really fast-paced campaign where they're lucky to get a week of downtime, which I find based on a lot of discussions I've had with people in the community is most campaigns, then I make crafting times the 4th of the normal time. So yeah, that's fast crafting. Number 4, I feel like a lot of people might do this, and maybe some of you don't even realize it's technically a house rule, but history checks in the player's handbook, the only thing that they are used for in the official rules are to recall lore about historical events, people, nations, and culture. So it's quite literally a check about history, and I do it a bit different at my table. So as it says, history checks for bad note takers. If any of my players want to try to remember something that either happened in the last session or an NPC that they interacted with and they forgot what the NPC said, or anything that they could probably have learned from taking notes, they can instead make a history check. And I, as the DM, based on their role, will give them information of something that they, as the player, forgot. I just think that history checks are very underutilized otherwise. And then a lot of players don't want to take notes, and I would rather them know the information than just be lost and not know what's happening. Also, it's a way to kind of buff the intelligence skill a bit, and also motivates people to take the history proficiency. So yeah. And then last but not least, we have exhaustion and death saving throws for number 5. Ted from Nerd Immersion in his video has a similar house rule, but mine is still different, and I'm gonna go over it. So first of all, when the 1D&D playtest came out, they were playtesting exhaustion, and we all remember the 2014 exhaustion rules being super clunky and really punishing and kind of convoluted. They were trying to simplify it, and in the 1D&D playtest, they made it super simple, and we still use the 1D&D playtest exhaustion. When you make a d20 test, you subtract your exhaustion level from the d20 roll. So that was the 1D&D playtest exhaustion. We do the same thing, but we add the caveat that you don't subtract it when you're making a death saving throw, just because that's a little too punishing with the death saving throw rules that I'm about to go over. If you guys don't remember, the 2024 rules exhaustion that they landed with is that you subtract 2 from your d20 test per exhaustion level. So this house rule exhaustion is not quite as punishing. Also, the 2024 exhaustion makes your movement speed reduced. I think it's by 5 feet per exhaustion, or maybe it's 10 feet. Let me know down in the comments which one it is. So yeah, this is definitely less punishing, but you're gonna have it more often because when you drop to 0 hit points, you gain a level of exhaustion. And all it does is subtract 1 from all your d20 tests, which is pretty punishing. And then, as you know, with the rules, you can get rid of exhaustion with a long rest, or you can get rid of exhaustion with a greater restoration spell. But we also allow the lesser restoration spell to cure exhaustion levels, just so it's not too punishing, especially at lower levels. And yeah, that is my house rules. If you don't mind, I would really appreciate if you like the video. It really helps with the algorithm. And I'm trying to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2026. So if you subscribe, it would really mean a lot to me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.